Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis. And, before we introduce our amazing guest, I just want to ask everyone to please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, ask a question. Who knows? It could be answered on the next, episode. So, anyway, I'm about to introduce Tony Rodrigues, and I'm about to talk about secret space program. And you all might say, what the hell are you talking about that for, Sandy? Well, think about it. There's a lot of things we don't know. We know that there's something off about many things in our lives or in the world that we've been taught to believe. We know there's shadow governments, the media doesn't tell the truth. And we also know that we've had dreams that are so real that when we wake up, we're shaking our head, or we could have marks on our body that are only explained by the dream. And then we just sort of dismiss it because we're like, well, I can't explain that because to me, this 3D body, this physical flesh and bones is all I've got, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about Tony's experience. And, if you have a lot of questions and all that stuff, just save them for the comment section for the next time. And his website will be in the description, any information, so you can get firsthand knowledge. But in the meantime, while you're listening, I would just ask that you uncrinkle your face and put your opinions on mute, open your heart a little bit, and turn up the volume on your listening ears. So here we go. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Sandra. Thanks for having me. Long time no see.
Long time no see. Go ahead.
My camera blurs a little bit randomly, so it's a computer issue. I don't know. I ignore it and just keep going. But
no worries. We will definitely ignore it because on YouTube you can see it, and then when you're on podcasting, all you're doing is hearing it. So, but no one's seeing you. So let's just go.
Good deal. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. It's a beautiful day here in DC. Life is good. And, what can we say? I'm just so excited to be chatting with you and let the viewers hear, how this all started for you.
Wow. It was a long time ago. So I am a 20 and back witness. If you wanted to put me in a box, is technically what I'm called. There are a lot of people that have come forward talking about a phenomenon in ufology called the 20 and back, where they can abduct somebody and by exotic means of technology have them work for them for 20 years or so, and then put them back very close to the same day that they were abducted. So I was 10 years old in 1982 and got abducted by ETs in my room and was in a facility somewhere, and they did a surgery on me. There was conversation. I was then I woke up with no memory of who I was and lived basically for 20 years in these programs, in black programs. First one in Inyo, California, was the tail end of Project Grill Flames. I found a great deal of data about it, and it was a remote viewing and psychoenergetics research, and it was myself and a dozen other kids or so. And spent some time there and then was shipped off to other programs with what they had taught us. And then when that was obsolete, they put me in another place and then another place and then sold me off, in their words, to the military, which was the secret space program. And I went into space. So here's where, like you said, people might scrunch their face. And if people didn't react with a little bit of skepticism, I'd think it was weird. Right. So you should be skeptical. But the reality that what I remember and what some details have checked out and a lot of details have had overlap with other people that said they've gone through the exact same thing. So I'm not the only one. There are thousands of people that have come forward saying that they feel they've been through the same thing. Basically, I was sold off into space. There's a base on the back of the moon, many bases on the moon, and then off to Mars, where there is an established human colonies, quite a bit of people living on Mars already underneath the surface, and then to someplace called Ceres, which is in between Mars and the asteroid belt. And I worked on a craft. I was ship maintenance for about 8 years, and then worked the last few years as a cargo engineer on a ship, on a UFO, basically, that was going throughout the galaxy into nearby galaxies, trading for technology. Like that was the ship's mandate. When it was all over with, they took me back to the moon. They put me through a bunch of procedures and erased my memory of it. And I woke up back in my 10-year-old body the next morning. So I've narrowed it down. I know what day it was. It was April 15th, 1982, I was taken and at night, in the middle of the night. And on April 16th, 1982, I woke up in my bed feeling like I had been gone for 20 years, but no memories of what happened. And got up and went to school, and I was a completely different person. I was completely devastated emotionally and mentally, and lived my life kind of stunted. And in May I got at the end of April of 2015, I got an MRI scan of my head, and about 10 days later, all the memories came back, flooding back. Like 20 years of memories, and I didn't know what to do with it. And I started looking up things that I remembered and finding out that they were real. So that was the order of events that happened, and that's what really caused me to start reaching out to others, to researchers. And then I was asked to contribute and do interviews and explain my testimony. And one thing led to another, and I'm still doing it. And that's been a few thousand hours. I've been on networks. I've been on Gaia. And in the last 3 years, I've really been heavy in the talking circuit. I've done, 10 to 12 live appearances a year internationally. So I've been all over the place telling the story. People have asked me to come and speak about it. And the whole time, so I know I put a whole lot there in a nutshell. There's got to be a lot of questions for somebody that never heard. But I want to say that after I got my memories back and I began to speak about it physically, uh, I would totally understood the burden of proof and what that means. Um, the ability to have any kind of proof to back up, be like, oh, BS, back up what you're saying, buddy. You know? And so I've spent most of my time in the last 10 years finding evidence, and I've been able to find a lot of things. And so much so that recently in 23, when I found I went back to the place, physically set foot there. They pushed back. So I had interference in my life by probably government agents, who knows what they were, but I had pushback, and my life took a big turn after I went physically to one of the locations. And so that's what I've been doing. I found a lot of the uh, receipts, the funding trail of the remote viewing program, and a lot of the evidence of that program, remote viewing and psychoenergetics. And so I tout that. Now I wrote my third book out of it. I found a lot of evidence about the places I remember when I was during the 20 and back, which was Seattle, California, and Peru. And those places are there, and a lot of info has panned out. The airplane that I remember being on, we found that. We found that it's the long range variant. These are all things that I've talked about previously. I called them out first, that I couldn't have known that when we went and investigated, they were there exactly how I described it. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. I teach remote viewing, and I've began to unpack some of the things I remember, the technologies that I worked with, and I guess just hanging out with people on the road, the other speakers that I meet, we become friends. I learn from them, and so I've started working in the technology of a lot of the things that I remembered being the factual, and so that's kind of what I do now. And then I wrote three books. The series Colony Cavaliers is the 20 and back, the story of the 20 and back, and then I followed it up with a short book called Project Star Maker, which was in there, but I felt that it was like the spiritual side of it, which was hard. It's hard enough to say that I was abducted for 20 years and put back the next day, and then to get into a spiritual aspects of it, I just let that. I never really touched on it for many years. Then my testimony, and then my editor said, Tony, this is the story you got to tell. And so we wrote Project Star Maker. And then my follow-up book was evidence that I found around the remote viewing and about psychoenergetics and remote viewings called Beyond Sight. So 3 books out about it. And I host weekly stuff about remote viewing, remote influencing, and psychoenergetics. I've got 5 groups, I think, 7 tiers, 5 groups of people, 70 remote viewers. We meet every week, and we do remote viewing targets. We do remote influencing. We do group meditations and healing targets as well.
Well, this all sounds to me like you took a very traumatic event and turned it into such a positive teaching, mentoring, and you live and you breathe it, and you appear to be so together with it. But I cannot imagine, I do a lot of past life regression. So when personally and on clients. And so when a particular traumatic event comes up into the memory field, sometimes it can be very debilitating, because there becomes a question, did that actually happen? And did it happen the way I remembered it? And then it has a physical toll on the body emotionally too. I cannot imagine, like, I've had an MRI, I'm moseying along my life, I'm, got a family, I'm doing my thing and working, and all of a sudden, what the hell is this movie playing in my head? And how do I make sense of it? So from that point on, that had you seek, you know, not so much medical professional help, but maybe other people who could have experienced it, which then helped you then write your first book series, Colony Cavalier, which has all the details in it. But how was that for you?
Well, I knew that. So I actually, in the first 3 days of it, it was very overwhelming, and I was working from home. Barely getting by. I had 3 daughters, and I was in a pretty flat groove in my life. I was a fairly normal, but kind of not on a plateau of life. And when it happened, I had all these memories, and I thought, what? That must be real. And what happened was imagine going through that and then remembering living in a town in South America that you've never heard of, that's never been on any kind of media. And not only that, but knowing the food, knowing where the fishing spots are, knowing the culture, knowing the lifestyle, the way it is to adapt and live. And then I went to Google Earth and looked, and it was there exactly how I remembered it. And at that point, I knew I was in over my head. I knew that these are real memories, and oh my God, how did that happen? Right. So the other thing is anything that I can prove, which greatly I did when I went to Inyokern, proves the 20 and back because I never left home. My parents never missed me. I was gone for one night and put back. So I have a lot of evidence, a lot of witnesses that I never went to Seattle or South America. So there's no way that I could have known about those places. But about the third day in, after I got the memories, when I started research, when I saw that they were real, I thought, "Oh God, I need help." And I got in the phone book and looked for counselors. I started wanting to call and get some professional help because it was a lot to deal with, and especially I was greatly abused. So there was sexual abuse. I was abused. I was a slave. I was slave labor for them, and I went through processed it all quick, and then I realized I closed the phone book and I said they're just going to medicate me. There's no answer for this as far as they have. The only thing that's going to happen is they're going to put me on a bunch of medicine that I don't need. And so I oddly enough reached out to researchers, and I started looking for other people that will just listen to you and understand what it's like, what you went through are the best therapy for what I went through. And the first few years I couldn't even it took me 6 years to write the book because I would be so depressed after writing one paragraph and especially in the early, I was 10 years old when they took me, and I went through most of the abuse before I was 16. So when I relived that by putting pen to paper, it was devastating. So there were many months that I would sink into a depression after recalling that. And actually finishing the book what exercised a lot of that. So people always say, "Tony, you got it together. You talk so good." I have a lot of polish because I've done, you know, many stand-up gigs. And I've done hundreds and thousands of hours of interview over a Zoom like this over the last 10 years. It's been 10 years, since I got my memories back. So I've talked about it so many times. I've talked it out. Like an interview really was a double-edged. So they had me on to be a guest and for the audience, and I was talking to them as therapy because they were listening and not criticizing me. So that was a
Mhm.
big chunk of therapy, doing the talking about it. And I still like even recently, still this year, I still keep finding details that I called out that are true. That there's no way I could have known intimate details about things that happen in secret government programs that now are declassified. And I can look back and there's things that I called out that are true, and it just keeps happening. So the little bits of validation are also a big deal. I think a lot of people, when we talk about just the abduction uh, experience with ETs. That's one genre, but then the people that are getting satanic ritual abuse that are abducted and brought into these things, so the people that are getting into military projects and going through the mind fracturing, the MK Ultra phenomenon. Those were all tied into what I went through, what I experienced in those 20 years, because it's widespread at the top of the top secret level. That society has a lot of darkness in it. And so many people come forward, but they don't have anybody to listen to them, and they don't have a lot of evidence. It's very easy to put somebody through something like this and deny them evidence. And I
Mhm.
think that in my case, the people that had me taken, which is what happened, I the people that had me taken did it last minute, and there was a few things that bungled. They botched it. And so I was able to get my memories back and then find confirmation and do that in step with researchers that already had a great deal of information. So some researchers will take information from other credible witnesses and not tell anybody, so that when another witness comes forward and they say the same thing, they're like, it's a secret, and how could you know that? It kind of validates you. And that's what happened to me in the very beginning. So I was taken seriously. And a lot of people just aren't taken seriously. I People email me pretty much every day, very long emails, very long messages on Facebook saying, look, it all started when, and they tell me their story because they just don't have anybody else to talk to.
Yes. Well, I think your experiences and then your memories being restored into such detail has allowed you to um, create a sacred space and a platform for those to come forward and at least bring their bits and pieces. They may not be as detailed as yours, but have some comfort to know that they're not alone and they're not crazy. And I think that's very commendable of you, because I think in your stories, as the memories came on and the book became on, the Tony that existed before does not exist, anymore. So there's sort of a new developing Tony from all of this, from how I understand it from your stories and your truth telling. Um,
But
Go ahead.
I think there were a couple levels to that. I think the minute I remembered everything, I integrated and became a different person. I had
Mm,
not a lot of details, but I had the life experience, kind of my hunches got before I had my memories back. Like I said, I was on a plateau of life, and it was all about earning money to get this status. That I was on that hamster wheel that they provided for us, and I had my kids to worry about, and I wasn't making much money, and that's all I cared about. One day I was going to reach a number that was going to make me happy. Like I was bought into that illusion. And when I got my memories back and I went through all of the trauma, basically set the bar very low. And I looked around and thought, man, I've got it made already. And I didn't like the bar for my happiness, the unattainable goal of happiness that I had went way down. And I started to look around and be happy for everything I had. And my wife at the time, um, didn't understand. Like I became a different person. In my heart, I became a different person because I had the life experience return.
yes.
And so the bar for happiness for me is still pretty pretty low. Just not be in pain and have all the, check the boxes, and I'm pretty content. There isn't a goal that I need to attain to be happy. And that was what came back with all the trauma. Was so people that
Yes.
have been traumatized, I think, understand what I'm talking about.
Mm.
And then later on, processing it and getting through it all, and then people reaching out, people treating me the way they do. Like, I spent most of my life basically just a normal guy, invisible to people going down the street. And I go to these events and people treat me like I'm something, special. And I am a normal guy. I came up the same as everybody else. And what I'm saying is that treatment kind of fixed a lot of the damage I had to my self-esteem. And I really don't want to become a butthead or think that I'm better than anybody. But I'm saying all the love I received was healing as well. So people have been very loving to me. I go to these events, people give me gifts, they come up and give me hugs. I took a counter, I had a clicker, it's around here somewhere, to one of the events. I did so many hugs, and somebody asked me on the panel, "How many people have you hugged?" And I said, "I don't know, that's a good question. And next year I'll bring a clicker." And I did. The following year, I brought a clicker and I hugged 720 people in a weekend. Like, that's how many people came up to me. And they were, after a while, it was a game. They were come, they would find me. But what I'm saying is that kind of love and attention that most people never get. I really feel that we should all love each other like we're all celebrities. Really, everybody should be regarded as, you should regard everybody, even that person that cut you off in traffic, as your hero. And I think the world would be a different place because so many people have treated me good in the recent years that it's changed me. It really has solidified a lot of that gaping wound that I had from all the trauma. So, um,
Well,
you know,
I think with all the memories flooding back, and of course, flooding back so quickly, and not having a book to look at to reference, and you're sort of lost and all that, could absolutely make you feel like I'm a broken human being. There's something just, I've snapped, like something's happened. And it sounds to me like you've turned that all around until like it's just, all those cracks make you the perfect human being that you are, and that there's more accepting, loving human beings who appreciate all those cracks because they too have them, but in a different way, you
it's true. I
know?
think everybody has, I say this a lot to people that, for whatever reason, that when I talk about trauma, because some people go, "Tony, you've been through so much. What about this and that?" Well, it's not a contest to see who gets traumatized the most.
Mm,
Every human being experiences a great deal of trauma the very moment that they realize as a young child that the world isn't what they want it to be. The world is what it is. And kids grow up and they can go for a long time with that bubble of mom and dad giving them everything and loving them, and everybody loves them. But kids sooner or later find out that there are people in the world that don't care about them, and that things in the world demand you to not be happy. And that's a very traumatic thing. Kids, everybody goes through this. We have our vision of what the world should be as a young child that experiences a great deal of love, and then we go out and see it's different. And that alone is enough trauma to always overcome.
yes.
Right. So that alone is enough for people. Most people need to overcome that later in life. And then it goes on to get, and then we deal with, when we talk about people, it gets progressively worse. Um, so there is a lot of sickness. Recently, I've really tried to put a pin in, so many people are hateful these days, especially, this subject. I've had my share of hate as well, saying that I was abducted by ETs and worked in space. So people have attacked me. But we've really been, the kids, especially the youth, have really been fed a line of hatred. This is good and that's bad, and it's good and it's evil. And hate, this is the good guy and that's the bad guy. We need to get him. And it's easy to see that it's not true and that it's a weapon. It's they're using them. And so I'm trying to put a pin in that and say, there's not everybody's really that bad and not everybody's really that good. What we regard as, and people go, "Well, Tony," the first thing I get is, "Tony, people are truly evil. There is evil." And I say, they're not evil, they're sick. The worst criminals that we have in the world, the worst evil that we get, we quarantine them. We don't kill them. Like we're getting away from that. The death penalty is one out
Mhm.
there, but I'm saying for the most part, evil people that repeatedly do evil, bad things, we don't just put them to death instantly. We quarantine them like a sickness, and we try to rehabilitate them because it's a sickness. It's not, good and evil. And everybody's trained to always look for the bad guy so that they can fight them. And it's been used against us. We've been spun. So anyhow, I think I'm on a tangent, Sandra. So I'm
No,
sorry.
I love it. I love it. But I do want to go back to 10 years old and
Mhm.
then waking up in another location. And you said they were working on you. Did you then continue on as a 10-year-old on the other side? And if so, not to be stupid and funny, but this is my sense of humor. Did you need a work permit at 10? And did you have a benefit plan? Like,
No,
did you have dental? Like, what was going on over there?
no, I did not exist. So at 10. So
Mm.
they took me, we tried to make it quick. I went to school with a kid who said his dad was Illuminati. What's your dad do? And I didn't get along with him. And he pointed me out to his dad that Wednesday, April 14, 1982. That Wednesday, his dad came in for the science fair and he pointed me out to him. The following Thursday night, I was abducted by
Mhm.
ETs. Um, so there were humans involved. Then I went through up to some base with a bunch of other ETs around it, and then woke up with no memory of who I was in Kern, California. And I began a remote viewing and psychoenergetics advanced research program that I found the gap in the books and funding, and like I found a lot of things, the personnel that were there. I found a great deal of evidence around that program. Um, so I didn't exist. We did not exist. I was regarded as a clone. They called me a clone. And from there, I would never went to school during that time. From 10 years old, I did later in space when I went into the infrastructure in the solar system. Then they gave me education for each job that I did, so I'd get job training, but not really school. And I lived in Peru for 2 years. I was, after the psychoenergetics program, they could give us drugs, and I was a channel or like a psychic for a drug runners in Peru. And I found that airplane, I found that town, I found where the destination. It was all how I remembered it. And that lasted two rainy seasons. And then I was shipped to Seattle, Washington, and I was privately owned. There was a billionaire there. He had six boys. Some boys came and went in a home, and then he had another house on the other side of a huge property with girls. And he was throwing parties, and we were sex trafficked, and that was what was going on. And I was there till I was about 16, and then they said I was, well, for whatever reason, many reasons, but they sold me to the military. And because I was a secret in the first place, it's not like I went to boot camp where I had, like you said, medical insurance. I didn't have a paper trail, so I went into the secret military, and that was straight into space. They took me. She drove me to a like a large box store, and in the back where they had dumpsters, if you look behind like a Walmart, it was a big building like that. She drove me there, two men in a van, grabbed me, threw me in the van, gave me an injection, and I went to sleep. And I woke up on a spaceship halfway to the moon, on its way to the moon, and with a guy that was a military guy in formal military uniform, and he just told me, you're going to be good for me, aren't you? And you're staying with me. I'm going to get you to where you're going. You're going to be fine. And I was 16-ish. And I don't know. Does that answer your question? Is that
Yeah, it tells me that you didn't go over to the other side and you were a grown man doing all of this. You sort of were similar to that age and then upward as you
I
went on
grew
to your
from
20 back.
during that 20 and back, I grew from. So this is the other thing, like it might be TMI. I grew from 10 years old to 30 years old. And towards the end, I had got promoted to, I was on Ceres Colony, which has about a quarter million people living under the surface on the planetoid Ceres. They have artificial gravity. They have cities in there, train network that connects it all. But I had a girlfriend. I had a couple girlfriends. I had dated. I had the ability to go when I was done working. It was like a military job. and I had the ability to travel, and I had a girlfriend. And what happened was when they put me back, so I was 30 years old, and they put me back, and I woke up the next day back in 1982, and so I was 10 years old in 1982. We did not have the internet. I did not have access to any kind of pornography or erotica or anything like that. I had no sex drive. I was 10. And the next day, I was attracted to adult females. I was attracted to adult girls, and I didn't understand the memory wasn't there, but the emotional bond was there.
Yes.
So the sexual bond that I had with my girlfriend on series, a few weeks before they took me, that emotion, that need for that bond was still there as an adult. But I was a 10-year-old boy, and as a result, I was a mess. I I didn't do things that normal kids did. I was not into it. I didn't want to go to the prom. I didn't want to go, like I'd already lived through all that once and I didn't know why. So the memories weren't there, but the emotional development was there, or the emotional problem, whatever you want to call it. But and brings up a great point, which I had didn't was unintended. I've worked with a few thousand people that have called me. I did 2 consults yesterday for people that feel that they were in 20 backs as well. I've compiled the data on over 2,000 people, more like 2,500 people. I've compiled the data statistics from people, and it's common. Like, that's what happens. They come back and they don't know why, but they have a huge personality change. They behave differently. They don't fit in anymore. There's substance abuse because of the PTSD aspect of it, depending on what they did. Yeah. But it's a common denominator that people that are abducted and do a 20 and back see a really big emotional life change. So they don't have memories, but their emotional structure as a person changes greatly in one day.
How often do you think this is occurring now?
So I roughly did the math years ago. I think they have the capability to take up to 2 million people a year, 2 or 3 million people a year, and it's global. It's everywhere. Not, I think it's more prevalent in the United States and Europe. Um, and I think they have the world cut up. So extraterrestrials that interact with us, I believe, have the world cut up into zones. And so certain extraterrestrials that need certain things, like they will only take people in Australia. So so all the Australians have similar abduction stories. The secret space programs, they take people from the US, Canada, and across Europe, even Russian, part of the Russian areas. But they seem to all have common denominators or similar stories, similar memories that, the framework of memories is similar. So, but I think it's still going on. I think it's a viable thing. It's been abused. In my case, I went through great abuse. And we talk about Niara Isley, who went through the same thing, also great abuse. Most of the people I talked to were abused in it. So it's a program that's obviously gone with no oversight. And it's a very, very powerful and important technology. So we're talking about adding 20 years of your prime time onto your life. So imagine being a teenager and then living for 20 extra years and then going back and keeping the memories and being able to live your 20s all over again. Like, think about how valuable that is, what that would be worth if we all had another 20 years to go back, to literally go back and do it all over again. So that's what this technology enables. And some people are out there taking advantage of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and this is stuff the movies are made out of, and everyone thinks it's not true, but there's always a portion of truth in every movie,
Yeah,
and
well,
every
and what I've noticed is they make movies that flirt with the subjects, but not the subject itself. We
Mhm.
get one truth in sci-fi movies. They give you one thing that's real, that's from the space program or whatever, that's actual, that's a secret. And then they give you a bunch of other stuff that's fake that makes it look ridiculous. And that's how movies do it. But yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It would make a great movie.
Yeah, but yours would be really truthfully detailed. So what would you say to, let's just say, a mom? and she notices her child was very different, couldn't figure it out. Teachers couldn't explain it, didn't can't put their finger on anything that traumatically happened in their home demographics or surroundings that would have altered this child in a behavioral way. And there's no doctor that could explain it, etc. So, because that's what makes me really think is because it's, it happens, right? But they go to a regular standard primary care, then they get medicated, then occasionally they get a therapy, occasionally they have a lot more that goes on. They don't always bounce back. They could live very harmful lives to themselves because they're just altered in many different ways. What would you say to a parent that may notice that this has occurred to one of their children?
That's a powerful question that I get asked very rarely, but I have been asked it. How do I teach my child to deal with this if they are confronted with the same thing? And I would say if you're just raising a young child, just tell it the power of it saying no. Most children don't have the ability to say no. We kids grow up and you go, finish your food. No, I don't wanna. You sit there and finish your food. And so they said no, but it doesn't get honored. So children don't have the value of no. And I say reinforce that. Teach your child that when they say no, it has power. And so that they know you got to learn most adults need to learn how to say no. And it's because of that. It's because your no gets overridden as a child. You say no for all these things. Most parents don't explain why. When the child says no, you got to say, you got to tell why. That's prior to an abduction. So if you see a behavior change, I'll say this is personal information. This is personal. My middle daughter, I think, went through the same thing and does not have. She was a straight A student, outstanding student, honor roll, soccer, captain of the team kind of thing. She was very high performer. The middle one, the older one and the younger one were more normal kids, but my middle daughter was a very high performer. And we lived at the time, I lived in Hawaii, lived on Maui, and we were out in the country and never locked the house. I left my garage window open for 5 years. I never, but we were in the country. There was no um, traffic there. And then one night, for 3 nights, I woke up in the middle of the night and I locked the whole house up. I was just spooked. I was totally freaked out. The week later, my kids say, "Dad, we saw a UFO." My daughter totally, in the coming months, totally withdrew from school the same way that I did. "What's going on? Your grades are failing." She was a completely different person, like in a depressive kind of state. Basically went through the same thing. And I was aware of what it might have happened at the time. And I sat her down and I said, "Look, I went through the same thing." And I didn't, without giving details, I sat her down. I said, the father-daughter talk. Come on, help me out in the garden kind of thing. Took her out to the garden and sat her down. And I said, "Listen, you might have lost the drive, the desire to do good for whatever reason, but just get it over with, fake it. Because don't withdraw from school and then later on in life regret it. Because right now you can get back on the saddle. You can at least pass. At least set yourself up in the future to where, like I had to reason with her and say this, like I get it. I had to say understand what you are feeling, but you can't completely withdraw. Consider this a vacation and you need to put some effort, even if you're never going to use it, even if you're right and withdrawing is the right thing to do. You need to graduate and you need to have the ability to go to college if you choose later." And she did. She did slowly but surely. It took her a few months, but she got back on the horse and she graduated and did her thing. But she was forever a different person. She was having dreams of reptiles and blonde people and pyramids on other planets and working on a spaceship. She just kept having these dreams in the middle of the night. And she would tell me, and I wrote it down. She made pictures of it, and So yeah, I think she went through the same thing, and I think that was it. So that's what I did with my daughter in that circumstance. And the biggest thing you have to do is reason. I think most kids are reasonable. I really see it nowadays in parenting that people don't tell their kids why. We don't shut up, be quiet. You're supposed to say, please be quiet. We're doing something here, and it's not appropriate to interrupt everybody. There'll be time for you to talk afterwards. Tell them why. And kids don't get that. And so the behavior is just on the whim of the inconsistent whims of the parents. And they have no respect for authority and no real sense of why. You have to say why. We don't scratch the car's paint. It's very expensive. We don't do that. It costs a lot of money. I could buy you a motorcycle with the money you just scratched the paint with. Just
Mm-hmm.
so you know. And you don't have to punish them or demonize them or anything. Most kids are totally curious and nobody gives them a why about it. And when my daughter had those things, I addressed the whys. This is why you need to do good in school. This is why you need to care. This is why you need to get out of this depression. And you need to realize that it's temporary. So I'm on another tangent, Sandra.
Well,
This has
I
been
love it because I think it's
Space
important that
Program
people
Parenting.
hear it. I think people really need to hear it. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for kind of going back a little bit to the beginning, because I know you're so far past that now and helping others on do with different platforms and speaking and writing and teaching your remote viewing. But I would urge any parent or any person, if you're interested in this subject, just simply go look up TonyRodrigues.com. But if you feel like you have some similarities or some memories that may come up, again, go to TonyRodrigues.com. And if you're a parent that you feel there's something that has occurred that's unexplainable, go to TonyRodrigues.com. And, he's very receptive with helping others and supporting and listening and so on. And maybe you can find some answers or some peace within to assist you to achieve more answers. Um, and we just really appreciate you being here, Tony. I can't tell you how much I thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. It's an honor to tell the story anytime I can. I'll tell all the craziness, all the unbelievable stuff. I will tell to anybody that asks.
Great. And we'd love to have you back on to maybe talk a little bit more about it if you would.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, well, stay put there, Tony. Now, thank you all so much for tuning in to Keep It Spiritually Simple. Please, again, like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, a question. And yeah, we'll see you all on the next episode. Bye.